All right, welcome to another presentation of the BlueSeer software application. We're going to focus right now on the BlueSeer EDI mapping tool, and we're going to look at creating another translation map. The translation map will be from a CSV format to an X12 810. So in your CSV file, your comma delimited file, you have invoice information from a spreadsheet that you've exported to a CSV. And then on the right hand side, you're going to create and translate that into a X12 810 formatted invoice for your customers. BlueSeer software is now up to version 6.5. 6.5 was released last month, and we're now up to patch level 7. So if you want to follow along with this translation map, you need to be at 6.5.7 here. By the way, this demonstration is being done on a Linux Mint operating system. The procedure is exactly the same on a Windows operating system, so if you're on a Windows OS, feel free to follow along as well. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to walk through 4 quick steps, or as quickly as we can, to we already have the CSV file, so I'll show you that, but we're going to do 4 steps of creating the structure file, creating the map, creating the document recognition rule of the structure file, and then the last step being the partner document association record. Once those 4 things are done, you can actually throw it into the inbound directory, and the EDI engine will translate it to that invoice format. Okay, so let's get started with the actual structure file that the sample file that we have. Sample bicycles.csv. So this is just a sample, an example of a CSV file that has invoice information in it. Here's your invoice number, your purchase order number, and there are 9 columns here with various information. Vendor code, remit to code, and this is just the bare minimum of what you would need to actually create an 810 invoice. There are a lot of other things you can add to an 810 invoice, but we're just going to create a bare minimum 810. So here's our file here. So first thing we got to do is create a structure file. So that represents this CSV file that we just looked at. So go to EDI. By the way, let me say that EDI, as of version 6.5, we've taken the EDI menu, submenu, out from underneath the address main menu. And it's got its own main menu at this point. So EDI, structure file maintenance, click new. And we're going to call this test CSV. Test CSV invoice file, which is basically just a comma delimited file that has invoice information in it. Now the doc type is BlueSeer specific, and it is associated with the X12 version of it. So if you have an 810 is an X12 invoice, if you have an 810 that's in a CSV format, or an IDOC format, or a JSON format, or UNE, then that is what these nomenclatures are used for. This will be your standard X12 810. But if it's a JSON formatted invoice, you will always use this nomenclature for the doc type. So in this case, we've had a CSV file that has invoice information in it, so we're going to use 810 CSV. The file type is a CSV. And then the delimiter for this guy, you can use any delimiter in your inbound file. We're going to use the comma, which is generally the most used. 44 is the decimal value for it. And then one of the things we recently added in the version 6.5 is the ability to read that sample file here, grab the header information, and create the structure file for you. So if you click here, it'll prompt you whether or not you want to remove the old stuff, and just say yes. And then I put the sample file here in the EDI parent directory, which is where it actually goes to initially to grab the file. And click open, and then there we have it. We have the definition of the structure file is already created for us, and all we have to do is click add. Okay, so that's the structure file. So step 2 is we need to create a map. Okay, so we're going to go over to EDI, map maintenance, click new. We're going to call it test CSV map. It'll offer you a recommendation for the source name, and this is what we're going to leave it as this. You do have to keep the .java on the end of it. Then we're going to say test CSV to 810. Get my numbers right. 810 invoice. Okay, and then the 2 fields that are very important here is the inbound file structure and the outbound file structure. This is the inbound structure side here. and this is the outbound file structure here, the destination side. So the inbound file structure is the one we just created. It was called TSCSV, sorry. The outbound file structure is going to be the X12 810. And then we'll just click add. And that'll commit the map. Then we have to pull that back up, and we now have our map with some sample code that's already commented out. Now, for those of you seen the previous demonstrations of the EDI mapping tool in BlueSeer, it is a text-based editor. It is not a drag and drop like some of the commercial applications that are out there. This is strictly a text-based editor. There's some pros and cons to that. I actually like the text-based editor better because, to me, you have to actually do some text editing anyway in some of the commercial stuff. So it's just easier for me to have it all in one place. But your mileage will vary on that opinion. So the first thing we're going to do is look at the structure file on the outbound side. So click structure, right click in the panel and click structure, and that'll pull this X12 810. And then we're going to do the same thing for the inbound side. Structure, and there's our structure here. And we're also going to pull up our raw file. Input, which is already in our EDI parent directory. And there's our sample file. So one of the first things we want to do is create this BIG segment, which is the primary segment in the X12 810 invoice. So I'm just going to cut and paste some of this stuff here. Take out the comments. And these are basically two built-in methods that you will use over and over and over and over. It's essentially how you create a segment and elements of a segment. So in this here, we're going to create the BIG segment. And we're going to create element 1. And this syntax has to be exact. And then we're going to pull information from this. Now element 1 is the actual, what is element 1? It's the invoice date, which is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, the 5th element. So we're going to do get row, which is another built-in method. Get row 2, what did I say, 4? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So in row 2, in column 5, is the value that we want for this invoice. This is header information, invoice number, PO number, vendor call. All this stuff is header, and it'll repeat over and over. So you could have just as easily go to row 3, 4, or 5. You can't use row 1 because row 1 has the header information in it. Okay, so that's BIG01, and then we're just going to do the other 3 elements of the BIG. 2, 3, 4. Make sure you change this element number, otherwise they will overwrite each other. And then, what's element 2? Element 2 is the actual invoice number, which is row 2, column 1. We don't have the next one's purchase order date, and we do not have purchase order date in here, so I'm just going to choose the same invoice date for now. Leave that the same. And then the 4th element is the purchase order number, which is in column 2, row 2, column 2. And then we're going to commit the segment, which is the BIG, which I got to take out this holder, and there we go. Okay, so that should create the BIG segment for us. So we click save, compile, gotta go back to the output tab, and the compilation was successful. And then we just click execute. You got to have an input file here to make this happen. So click execute, and there's our BIG with date, invoice. Yeah, that looks right. Okay, so now we're going to create just an RES segment real quick. So we'll do some more cutting and pasting here. We're going to put the vendor code in that. So REF, element 1 and 2. Element 1 is typically a qualifier, and we're just going to hard code the qualifier to VN. And then 1, 2, 3. So row 2, element 3, row 2, column 3 is where our value is going to come from. We're committing that segment. Click save, compile. And this compiles on the fly, by the way. You don't have to close the application and reopen it. It does compile on the fly. And there's our REF segment. Let's do N1 remit to, since we have the remit to code in here. Boom, boom. Then we're going to get to the detailed line item segments. N1, Control C, Control V, Control D. We're going to need 2 more segments, 2 more elements. Element 3, element 4. Element 3 is typically just hard coded as 92. And element 1, we're going to make that the RE for remit to. I think that's remit to. I don't exactly remember. It's close enough. The name normally goes here. We don't have a customer name, so we're just going to put hardcode customer name. You can put the customer name in here and just expand out your number of columns. Matter of fact, any other information you want, you just make sure you include it in the inbound file. Otherwise, you're going to have to hardcode it. And then the remit to code is in 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 column 4. Yeah, row 2, column 4, and that should give us our N1 segment. So save, compile is true. Click execute, and we have, okay, now we have our N1 RE. So now let's get to the line item. So what we're going to do is we're going to cut and paste some stuff from another map that's already one of our sample maps that come with the installation. So we saved it. So let's open up one of the other maps, CSV to 850, and it has the looping of the items here. So we're going to take this from here down to here, which basically loops on this for loop through the end of it for each one of the rows that we have. So we're going to Control C that, and we're going to come back, open up our text map again, test map, and we're going to paste that in. And so essentially, all this stuff here so far has been just built-in methods. This is a little bit of Java that you're going to have to know. Now, you don't have to be a Java expert to actually use this text editor, this mapping editor. You will need to know a limited amount of Java, though, because you will have to use some Java syntax and constructs of the language. One of them being the looping construct. So here you're looping starting at row 2 for the number of rows that you have, which you've got from here, get row count, and they're all being stored in variables. So from here, we need to create, so let's go back and grab our structure again, which is structure, and grab our input file. Okay, and the line item structure is not PO. Line item segment for the items is not PO1, but it is IT1, if I remember right. Let me make sure that's right. IT1, 48 important occurrences. Control N. Okay, yeah. The IT1. And this gives you the definition of each one of the elements of the IT1. So yeah, we're going to want IT1 here. So all we're going to do is overwrite this old segment, and we'll need the same number of elements actually. Line 1 is already given. It's basically saying give me from line 2 subtract 1 so that you get 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Essentially the line number count. So that's already a given. Line 2 is, what is line 2? Line 2 is the quantity. So we want the quantity, so that's in column 8. So 8 columns, 8, and price is in 9. So column 8 must be the quantity. So we're assigning segment 2, segment IT1, element EO2 with the get row quantity value for that loop record. So it'll be 5, 3, and 7. We need to go back up here and change this because this is going to be saving the total sum of quantities for us. So let's make that 8 as well, which is the quantity field. Okay, element 3 is unit basis of measurement code. So we don't have that in the inbound files. So we're just going to hard code that to EA. And then element 4 should be the price, which it is, and then we know that's in column 9, which is already there. That's good. Column 6 is normally a qualifier. We're going to use BP since we don't have it here, and then which is the item, and the item is in column 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Column 6, which we already have it as column 6. That's good. So that should create the IT1 segment the number of times that we have items, which is 3 times. Before we do that, we're actually going to do the PID segment as well. So let's go here. Create the PID, which is a description field for the item. Since we do have the description field in here, and it's in column 987, and it's column 7, row 7, column 7 of each row. 7 commit segment, and that should give us a description. So what we should get is IT1 PID, IT1 PID, IT1 PID for the 3 elements, the 3 rows that we have. So let's save, compile, compile was successful, and click execute. There we go. So we have a BIG, ref, N1, the IT1 loops 3 times along with the PID for each one of these values. So that looks good. And the price and the quantity matches what we have in the spreadsheet as well. So lastly, let's create the TDS segment, which is mandatory in the invoice, which is a summary field. Now remember, this item, all these item details loop from here to here. So it'll have to be after this. So we're going to create another mapped segment called TDS. There's only one element that we're interested in, element 1, which is the summary amount, which is quantity times price summed up for each one of the items. And I don't have that in here, I just have total quantity. So let's put in sum. So let's create a variable called sum and make sure that it's of double type double, by simply initializing it as 0.0 with the decimal place. And then we're going to basically do the same thing here, but we're going to multiply item time or quantity times price. And quantity was 8, price was 9, and I think that will do it right there. Oh, I need double here. Hold on a second. Since it is not an integer, they're both considered doubles. This here is a Java construct, a Java method to create a double value of a string value. Same with the integer value. Okay, so that's sum. That should be sum plus equals to make sure we sum it up for each row. And then we're going to say sum here. Click save. We have a compilation error on line 47. We can't put a double to a so this is a double type double. We need to make that a string, and so we have a built-in method for that called SNUM string number, and now that should create it as a string. So save, compile, which is successful. And there we have it. Now, the TDS01 is actually an implied decimal, so we need to get rid of the .84. Just remove the dot, essentially. And we're going to do that by using another method called format number. All the methods, by the way, if you right-click in here, list methods, all the methods are in here with parameters and descriptions and examples as well. One we want to look at is called format number. We're going to multiply sum times 100, and we only want it, we want no decimal places. If you put 2 there, you'll get 2 decimal places, etc., etc. So format number that, what am I missing here? That sum times 100 there, I think. Format number, sum times 100, comma that. That looks good. That looks good. So save, compile. We have a compilation error here. What am I missing? Format number, sum times 100. And I need one more on this outside here. Is that right? I'm missing one still. Sometimes the number, the format number, that's right. Comma 00, that looks good. That should work there. And it does. Okay, so yeah. So that's the nomenclature that you want right there. The syntax. So click on that, and then yes, our TDS one is correct, and it's got the implied decimal of 0.84. All right, so that's it. That's essentially the map that goes from BIG to TDS. The envelope tags, the envelope segments here will be done once the map actually processes the file through the engine as we're about to proceed to do so. You do not get the envelope tags in the mapping editor, just the in between the ST and SE. Okay, so now we have a map. So now the last two things we got to do is we got to create a document recognition rule for it. Document recognition maintenance, click. Actually, we're going to use an 810 CSV, which I think we have in here, but we got to do a little bit of adjusting to it. So 810 CSV is the document recognition rule. The structure is the structure we created, test VSV. And then everything here is the same. If you'll notice that row 1, column 1, the selection role is actually telling the application engine where to look for a field that describes what this document is. So it expects in row 1, column 1, there should be a value called invoice number. And if you look at our text editor, row 1, column 1 is the word invoice number. So once it sees that, it says, I know what this is. I'm going to call you an 810 CSV. These need to be changed because this is an outbound document. BlueSeer is our internal guy, so we're going to change that to sender ID. And we're going to update. And we're going to change this to receiver ID. Update element. And it's expecting the receiver ID to be in row 2, column 2. We're going to use the customer remit to code. So row 2, column 1, 2, 3, 4. We want row 2, column 4 here. Column 4. Update. And now we have it. The BlueSeer is actually hard-coded. This record type is fixed, or value type is constant. Click Update once you've changed these elements. And now, the last thing we have to do, actually I'm going to go ahead and try to load it now. So I go to EDI load. Let's put the file in the inbound directory. Let's close it. Copy, EDI in, paste. Get rid of that thing. And then let's try to refresh. And there's our file right there. We're going to try to load this real quick without actually having that fourth and final configuration of the partner document association record. And I'm going to choose not to delete it because we're going to have to come back to it. So click Run, and at least it recognized it. So we go over to EDI log file, click Run. It did fail. Let's see how far it got. Found partner, BlueSeer. It's an 810 CSV file, so it did recognize the file type. Doc type, and it says there's no map variable. Now we haven't associated the map variable with BlueSeer. The map was the map that we just created. So now let's go create the map association for this document type in this trading partner. So EDI partner transaction maintenance. Click New. BlueSeer is the parent. Since this is an outbound document, this is us sending it. It's an 810 CSV. Is there a map for it? Yes, there is. That's the map we just created. The receiver ID on this is going to be them, and what was that? What was that value? We're going to assume that their customer remit to code is the ISA sender and receiver ID, or receiver ID. ISA and GS. So we're going to put that here, that here. ZZ BlueSeer is the sender ISA ID. It's the GS sender ID, and the qualifier is ZZ. On the outbound side, we want our 810 to have element 42, which I think is the asterisk. 10 for new line, or line feed, excuse me. And 62, I think, is ISA 15. The prefix of the file on the outbound side is my 810. This is just arbitrary stuff. Suffix is text. Version. We're going to hard code that to 5010. And then click Add. Okay, now that's the fourth and final configuration setup that has to be done. So now we're going to go back and load that again. Refresh. Run. And it should have loaded without a problem here. Let's see what we got. And it did. It successfully loaded here. You'll see that it actually found the map, found map, test CSV map, etc., etc. So if you click the document view and click Run again, you can actually see the inbound and the outbound side. So here's the inbound side, and then here's the outbound side. And you'll see that this is our legitimate 810 X12 invoice with all the envelope trimmings and all the trailer segments as well. And this is a honestly honest to goodness X12 EDI invoice. I don't see anything wrong with it. So with that said, those are the four configuration steps that have to be done to actually create a map for a new document type, which is the 810 CSV that we just created, and then get that all through the translation engine so that the engine recognizes it and creates that X12. If we go to the outbound folder, it should have thrown it in the outbound folder once the translation completed, and there it is with a prefix of my10. If you open that up, there's the invoice. So in less than 20 or 25 minutes, we were able to create a new document structure type. We created a map, a very simple map of an 810. We created a document recognition rule for it, and then we created the document partner association to make it recognize the map. Okay, that is it for that tutorial. If you have any questions or concerns, feel free to reach out to BlueSeer.com. There is some contact information there. And also visit the source site. And the source, by the way, for the application is on GitHub. Again, this is a free application. It has all the EDI functionality. It's really an ERP application, but it does have all the EDI functionality that's required or necessary for most manufacturing businesses. It has the EDI mapping tools. It has translation mapping. It has workflow processing. It even has AS2 processing and SFTP and FTP communication protocols as well. So yeah, reach out to BlueSeer.com and the contacts page there, or go to the GitHub source site. All that information I think is in the help about. Yeah, all the contact information is there as well. So any questions or feedback, feel free to reach out. Other than that, thank you.